Which of these four equations is the correct formula for the Pythagoras Theorem? I'll give you a few seconds to figure it out. Okay, time's up. Be honest, you may have learned this in school, but you don't remember, do you? You haven't accessed that part of your brain for a long time now. And that's because from the moment you step out of school for the very last time, you don't just say goodbye to your classmates, your favorite teachers, you also say goodbye to 63% of the skills you learned during those 12 long years in the education system. Skills you would never, ever use again. But that's not all. You start your career in the real world and finally land your first real job making $40,000 a year. Finally, a job that doesn't pay minimum wage, and you're over the moon about it. That is, until you see your first paycheck. You suddenly come to the harsh realization that, after taxes, you're only left with a little over $2,500 a month, barely enough to pay for your basic living expenses. You're left feeling helpless and frustrated, and just when you think it can't get any worse, you receive a mysterious document in the mail. W-2? What is that? Your tax statement. The only problem is you have no idea what to do with it, how to file it, and how to make sure it's all accurate. The struggle is real and it's only just begun. A few years go by and you figure it's about time you buy a house. You diligently save up to buy a house, only to find out that houses are now the most expensive they've ever been in history. But that's just the tip of the iceberg. It turns out that the cash you've been putting away in your savings account is worth less now due to inflation, and you realize that you don't even have a good enough credit score to qualify for a mortgage. By now, you're getting the picture. This is just a glimpse of how the school system failed you when it comes to money management skills. Instead of learning about how money works, how it's created, and how you can accumulate it, you spend most of your time learning about things that don't matter, like how to use the cosine rule to find a missing angle of an isosceles triangle. If you're like me, then you figured it's time to take matters into your own hands. What I'm going to be sharing with you today are things that I believe our school system failed to teach us in regards to personal finance and money. Renting an apartment, buying a house, car insurance, homeowner's insurance. What do these things that all of us need in life have in common? They all require you to have a solid credit score. Schools don't teach you anything about this. They don't teach you how you can go about getting a credit score, how to build your credit, and how to avoid damaging your score, and that's a big problem. Your credit score is kind of like a first impression you make on a date. Imagine that tonight, you have a date scheduled with your dream girl at the fanciest restaurant in town. You're supposed to meet her there at 8 o'clock this evening. But in a moment of weakness, you drift off into a nap and wake up only 5 minutes before you're supposed to meet your date. You turn up late, you haven't showered, you're not dressed well, and you even forgot to make a reservation, so now you're in line for an hour waiting to be seated. You've now communicated to your date that you're unreliable and you made such a bad first impression that there's no way they're going to think that you're boyfriend material. You're not getting a second date. Well, that's kind of like having a bad credit score. When you're applying for something like a mortgage on your dream home, the lender is basically trying to figure out if you're a reliable person. If you have a history of not paying your bills on time, or if you've defaulted on a loan in the past, they're going to see you as a risk and not take a chance on you. On the other hand, if you have a good credit score, it's like showing up to that fancy restaurant date on time in a Bugatti wearing a 3-piece suit. You look like someone who's got their life together. Someone who can be trusted to follow through on their commitments. Now your date is impressed, and they might even be willing to overlook some of your other shortcomings, like your lack of a personality, or the fact that you steal all of your humor from TikTok. And in the same way, when you have a good credit score, lenders can overlook some of your other financial shortfalls, such as a lower than expected income on your tax returns. And speaking of tax returns, probably the biggest skill that schools fail to teach us is how to do our taxes. But this goes beyond things like how to file a tax return. This is Warren Buffett. He's widely regarded as the greatest investor in the world and is currently sitting at number 5 on the Forbes billionaire list with a net worth of over $100 billion. You can only imagine the amount of money this man brings home every year. Now I want to ask you a question. Considering that the average single worker in the US pays 22.6% in tax every year, how much tax do you think Warren Buffett pays? 30%? 40%? 50%? No, he pays 1%. Except he doesn't. He actually pays 0.1%. That's right, Buffett shocked the world and in the process angered social justice warriors when he announced that he was in fact paying less in taxes than his secretary. That is, on a percentage basis at least. And this isn't an anomaly amongst the world's rich list. Jeff Bezos pays 0.98% in taxes, Michael Bloomberg 1.3%, and Elon Musk 3.27%. Now you might be thinking that this isn't possible for you. These guys are billionaires after all. They have the best accountants in the world that enable them to use tax avoidance strategies that are beyond the reach of normal people like us. That's partially true. Because yes, it's probably true that you can't afford to hire a world-class accountant to reduce your tax liability. However, there are still many ways us normal people can reduce our tax liability legally to save money, and school failed to teach us about these ways. Retirement contributions, claiming tax credits, opening a health savings account, there are so many ways to take advantage of the tax code, but the one I want to focus on is business deductions. If you've seen some of my other videos, then you know that I'm a huge advocate of doing side hustles. If you're doing any kind of project, freelance work, or business on the side, then you need to be utilizing business deductions to lower your taxable income. Let me tell you what I mean by this. Let's say this YouTube channel of mine brings in $1,000 in ad revenue in a month. If my tax rate is 20%, I will pay $200 in taxes on that $1,000 income. But let's say that in that month, I purchased a new laptop for $1,000. If I'm using that laptop primarily for video editing and other things pertaining to my YouTube channel, then I am able to deduct the cost of the $1,000 laptop against my income of $1,000. The end result? On paper, my YouTube channel didn't make $1,000, it made $0. That means that I don't have to pay any tax, even though I really did make $1,000. And this is just one example of a million different deductions that you can attribute to your business or side hustle to save you money. There are so many tax advantages to making your money as a business owner instead of as an employee, and school never told us how to start a business. School never even taught us the fundamentals of entrepreneurship. Instead, the education system teaches the idea that the amount of money you can make is solely dependent on your level of academic achievement. A long time ago, back when I was in 8th grade, I was voted by my grade as most likely to succeed. When I was at school, I achieved a lot academically and finished 3rd in my graduating class. But let me tell you, my academic achievements didn't go a long way towards increasing my income. I went to college and studied business at a top 25 business school, yet I didn't even go into a career related to business. The only thing that helped me increase my income was learning and developing skills outside of school. If you're traditionally book smart, everyone in school has this idea that you're going to do well in your career and make a ton of money. But the problem is that the reverse of this is also true. If you're not book smart, school instills in you a limiting belief that you won't make a lot of money in the future. And that is quite frankly a lie. Some of the best entrepreneurs in the world are not traditionally smart or well educated. And you don't even need to start a business to have financial success later in life. Many people working a trade or are in professions that don't require higher education are actually out-earning those in college-educated professions. A plumber versus a doctor. On your first impression, who do you think typically has a higher net worth? A doctor, right? Lawrence Kotlikoff, a professor of economics at Boston University, made waves when he analyzed the potential earnings of a plumber versus a doctor. He found that plumbers would have about the same spending power throughout their lives as doctors. He said that the expensive cost of college and lost wages were the two major reasons that future doctors or other professions that require advanced degrees would struggle at building wealth faster than plumbers. If the plumber invests his money and the doctor doesn't, then the doctor doesn't stand a chance. And that's because the thing that has the biggest impact on your financial success is not necessarily how educated you are or even how much money you make. It's actually how you manage your money. You see, most people that are academically smart still don't manage their money correctly. School failed to teach you the pillars of personal finance: budgeting, paying off high interest debt, building an emergency fund, investing for the future. This is how wealth is built. And the fact that this is never taught to us is honestly disappointing. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter if you have a relatively low income. You can still become wealthier than most doctors or lawyers if you simply manage your money correctly and avoid falling into the 4 middle-class money traps that I talk about in this video. I guarantee you're falling victim to at least one of these traps, and it might be what's preventing you from building wealth.